In today's video, I'm going to show you my professional photography workflow for working with Lightroom on the new iPad Pro. So I use Lightroom on the iPad a lot, and in fact, I'm actually trying to use it more and more and move away from Lightroom Classic on the desktop. Couple of reasons. One, it is much faster. The Lightroom Classic is so clunky, even on my really powerful desktop PC, it's really slow and it chugs away. Whereas Lightroom, particularly on the iPad, is super fast. Other reason is that it syncs all of your photos in the cloud using your Adobe subscription. And so I can edit my photos on here, I can edit them on my phone, I can edit them on other iPads, I can then edit them on my desktop. I don't need to transfer files myself, it's all just there. And that makes it really great for a professional like me when I'm working between different systems. So step one in the workflow, of course, is to have some photos on your SD card, pop them into a USB-C card reader, and we put that into the iPad. So far, so obvious. Then we load Lightroom. And at this point, you should get a little pop-up saying that the device is connected. Press continue to import. So we do, we press continue, and then we'll give it a few moments just for it to load up all of those photos on the SD card. I do find that even on this, the new M1 iPad, the most powerful one, still does take quite a long time to actually load these photos. So, pop it in, maybe make a cup of tea and just wait for it to do its thing. These photos are from a shoot that I did down in Selective Bay quite recently. I took lots of different shots because I was trying lots of different exposures. And so I have got 435 shots in total on here. So now we can see that it's just the shots of 28th of May that I want. So it's very easy for me to just select that date. That selects all of the photos in that date range. Now, crucially, I'm not just going to go and press import. I want to, first of all, click all photos and new album. Now this is really important if you're a professional and you're working with loads and loads of different photos, or frankly even if you're just taking a lot of photos and you're not a professional, you want to try and keep things neat and make sure that it's easy to find your photos. If I didn't create a new album for these would just be lost in an endless camera roll of thousands and thousands and thousands of images. It would be really difficult to find them. So I'm going to call this Seacliff. When was this? May 21. Press OK. And so now when I press import, it's going to automatically put them into their own folder. Again, this does take a few minutes. 42 of 435, it will take several minutes and then it will need to kind of process the photos in Lightroom. So again, another opportunity just to kind of click the button and then go and do something else for a little while and then come back when it's ready. 435 photos successfully imported, and it only took quite a while, but there we are. So now I've got all of these photos in one big folder, so now I can move on, I can go to other albums, and I can very easily come back. I've named it properly, so I know exactly where these photos are, so in the future, it's going to save me a lot of effort. But of course, now I need to actually whittle down the photos that I like, and so I do rely mostly with the keyboard, and specifically with the X button and with the 5 button. So what that does, X button, is to flag a photo as being rejected and therefore can be eventually deleted. The 5 button gives it a 5-star rating. So what I tend to do is flick through my photos, and as I see a photo that I definitely like and want to work on, I give it 5 stars. If there's a photo which I definitely want to delete, that's usually because it's blurry or the exposure's wrong or it's an accidental shot, I give it an X to get rid of it. I tend not to delete most of my photos because I like to make sure that I've got plenty of those raw files. So I only tend to delete the ones that are actually like bad photos where it's gone wrong, where maybe it was a long exposure and I kicked the tripod and it hasn't worked out super well. I like to make sure that I've always got those other ones to go back to should I need to. But it's pretty easy. I keep one finger on the X button, one finger on the 5, and I'll just move my way through. I just will leave most of the photos unrated and only basically pick out the ones that I really like or pick out the ones that are going to be deleted. These ones are kind of fine. I might give this one a 5 anyway. Don't love these. Don't really love that. Maybe I could do something with that. I'll give it 5 anyway. Sometimes I'll give it 5 stars with a view to come back to it, see what it's like, and then maybe do something else. You could arguably maybe give those photos a 3-star rating and then go and take a look at your 3s later on. But just find it kind of easier to work with either 5 or nothing at all. It's just my way of working. You may well have your own way of working or find something that works even better for you, but this is how I work when I'm doing my photos professionally. This one I'll give a 5, not so much that one. That one actually should be a focus stack, and I can't do that in Lightroom. That is one of the downsides of working with this version of Lightroom. Don't love these, but again, don't really want to get rid of them at this point. Quite like that with the big splash. So when I was taking these photos, I'm looking for foreground interest. I was looking to really get a good view of Bass Rock, and I'm looking for exactly the same things when I'm going through. Sometimes I'll kind of take a lot of different photos and I'll look back at them afterwards and think, that composition wasn't quite right and definitely could have done better, so I'll get rid of the shot. In this, very much wanted to focus on this rock around here with the castle in the background, and I was trying a variety of different shutter speeds, as you can see, going from quite a fast shutter speed to a much longer one here. We can zoom in very easily with a double tap, and it's actually quite blurry, so we hit X for that one. The other ones though, I'm not going to go through and check every single one. I'm just going to kind of give you the idea because there are hundreds of these shots. I really only want to be, I want to try and keep it as quick as possible, basically. Just for example, on these, I'm going to flick through, and the things that I'm looking for in this shot is a lot of water detail going around here. In this one, for example, or this one, the water level has sort of subsided a little bit, so we're just seeing a lot of empty, sparse rock, whereas this one, all of this water was swirling around. We've got loads of great detail, so it's very easy for me to give this one a 5, and I can go through, maybe not so much this one. This one I can safely just get rid of altogether. This one looks quite good, but I'll leave it as unrated for now. Same with this. Same with this. It's a little bit of a too slow a shutter speed, so everything's got a little bit too ghostly, and it's quite blurry, so that one can have an X. Same with this. So basically, that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to try and keep it quick, go through. If it's a shot that I think has potential, that can look even better with some work, it gets a 5. If it's totally wrong, it gets an X. Otherwise, I just leave it as it is. So I'm going to go through this really quickly now, and I'll see you on the other side. So I've gone through all of those photos now. They've been given either a 5-star rating, or they've had nothing, or they've been flagged to be deleted. So let's get rid of those flagged ones first. I'm going to just click a little filter icon up here. I'm going to click this flag, the crossed out flag, the ones to suggest to get rid of. There may be an easier way of just immediately deleting flagged photos. There is in Lightroom Classic. In Lightroom Mobile, this is the quickest way I found of doing it. Just selecting, just viewing only those photos, and then we click this, we go select all, and then down here we go remove and then delete. This will delete from the album and from all of my Lightroom photos. So 162 photos have gone. So now when we go back in, we have basically now only got photos that I either really like or that I am just not that bothered about. So let's bring that filter up again, and we can now click 5 stars, and we can see that there are 54 photos which I have decided are worthy of a little bit more attention. So the next step is that I will basically go through and start to do some basic edits and see if any of these shots are sort of worthwhile taking a little bit further. So it may just be that I try and bring up the exposure and just play around and think, was a photo that maybe was a bit too dark? Now I've just given it some basic tweaks. Does it look any better? And actually I'd kind of go with this. Yeah, not so much, not really. And in which case I'll put its rating back to 0 and it will remove it from my 5-star gallery. I'll do the same thing with this one maybe. Bring up that exposure. This one looks like it may have a little bit more promise. I kind of like how minimal Bass Rock looks in the water. We might straighten up our horizon a little bit because it is a little bit crooked. In fact, there's some barreling from that lens that we can correct. Go to optics, enable lens correction. That's made a big difference. And so just with those few tweaks, this is a photo which I think actually has some promise. So we can leave that one in. Might do the same with most of these, and it may just be a case of maybe I think I've overexposed the shot, but it's not worth deleting until I've seen whether I can pull back that highlight detail, which in this shot I have, or I can increase the shadows and sort of create something a bit different than the original straight out of camera raw file may have suggested that it was. I don't love this shot. It's kind of nothingy really, but we can move on. This one's a little bit different as well. Let's say we want to straighten it up. I think I want a different crop here, 4:5. You can see just how quickly it is. Working with Lightroom on the iPad, it's a very different experience to kind of flick between these quick edits on the tablet than it is on the desktop. Something like that looks quite nice. Again, we want to increase that exposure because it's quite dark. Bring back those highlights, up those shadows a little bit. Maybe in the color, we'll go to color mix. So we have the exact same tools in here that we do on desktop. Bring back that yellow because it's looking a little bit sickly green. Something down here. Same with those. Maybe these greens actually as well. We can bring those into more of an autumnal looking, vibrant orange rather than green. I think that looks kind of cool. Not going to do anything more with this at this point because we're just playing around. And some of these look kind of neat, and I really do. I like these swirling water ones. The ones I was particularly paying attention to, as I mentioned before, are the ones where the water is really going up around all of the rocks, but we've still got detail on these rocks here so that we can still see that the water is going around the rocks. These ones are a little bit too busy, not so keen here. But let's say something like this one, because I like the way it sort of flows in like ribbons here. It looks very silky smooth. It doesn't look quite pin sharp actually, and it isn't, but I'm wondering if that's because it hasn't fully loaded or if that is definitely... Let's have a look at this one, for example. Oh yeah, this one is pin sharp. Okay, so let's start with this one maybe. This one looks good. Yeah, okay. So you do have to zoom in. You have to pinch to zoom, go in, have a look at those details and make sure that your shot's actually looking good. We're going to go 4:5 aspect ratio, and I'm going to bring it in just so that that castle is right in the center of our frame, lining up nicely with this rock here. A little bit of this one down here at the bottom, but mostly we've got all of this water nicely swirling around. It's looking really great. Let's bring back those highlights. In our color, we can warm the scene up slightly. Maybe bring that tint up. Now, a real time saver is to use presets. Now, presets get a lot of bad rap a lot of the time, particularly with photographers who will maybe download presets of their favorite Instagram photographers and they will just apply them wholesale to their photos and then consider their photos done. Now, that's fine if that's kind of all you want to do with your photography, but for me, using presets is a really good jumping off point, a great way of like saving a bit of time and getting some inspiration for your photos, and then you take it further. You add your own edits over the top and then come out with a shot which is absolutely your own. So for example, in here, let's just start off by going into the presets tab. The great thing is that because I've loaded my presets into Lightroom before now, it syncs across everything. I didn't have to load these in again when I got a new iPad. I just loaded in Lightroom and it's all there. It's the same on my phone, it's the same on my desktop. It's brilliant. So it means that my Visco presets are there, which is great because we've got some lovely ones, some gorgeous black and white ones, and some awesome colors. But I think for this one, which is always my favorite, particularly for seascapes, is A6 RAW, but just the half strength. Main A6 RAW is a little bit of a powering. So I'm going to apply that. Let's go into our light tab. I'm going to increase that exposure, increase those shadows a little bit, bring back those highlights though, because it's got a little bit bright. And definitely it has done something a little bit off with our colors. So I'm going to bring that tint up. It's gone a little bit too green, and maybe actually increase the warmth slightly, something around there. Let's apply a crop now, a 4:5 crop. I'm going to bring that up so my rule of thirds is going across these rocks here, keeping this one in down here, and all of this amazing water swirling around in the bottom of the frame. I think looks really, really cool. I like this shot a lot. There's our before, there's our after. Still, plenty more that we can do. Next thing I'm going to do is look into the profiles. Now these come as standard in Lightroom, and they can also be really, really powerful. They're basically the same as presets, except that there is an option to tone down the amount of the effect that's being applied, which is really, really great. When you use presets, you just either apply it or you don't. You've got to take it into Photoshop if you want to like dial in the effect. So one I really like is Artistic 3 because it gives this lovely kind of rich warmth to the rocks and it really brings out the blue in the water. Let's just turn that off. Look how kind of sickly green all these rocks look, and then we bring that up they've gone back to what is the really lovely, rich, kind of orangey tones which were in the rocks. If you go too far, it goes very pink and blue. I don't like that, but I actually think somewhere around a little bit over halfway, 105, I think that looks really, really nice. So that's been applied, and we can go back. And now I want to use some selective edits. I really want to try and edit this water. And so I'm going to use a brush, and I'm going to use a decent size, something around that. And I'm literally just going to paint it in very roughly with my finger on the screen like that. So simple. I'm not trying to be really specific with my masking. It's just roughly painted in place. But because it's got quite a feathered edge, it's going to blend really nicely. So I'm going to up that exposure just a little bit. I'm going to bring up those whites, bring back those highlights. But for water, the one thing that I always love using is clarity. Now, I wouldn't use this on faces or landscapes or even on the rocks. Everything will go very crunchy, but look what happens on that water as I bring up that clarity. All of that detail suddenly really cuts out. The whites of the water, of the foam, suddenly stands out against the blue. It looks amazing. Look at that without and then with. Really, really pops out. And a little bit of dehaze can help with that as well. Not too much, because as you can see, starts to go very crunchy, very dark. Want to avoid that, but just a little bit, something like that. And I think suddenly that water now looks amazing. There's so much more detail. We can go back and maybe up those whites a little bit more. Give it even more pop. We can maybe just see what those highlights are doing. You know what? I'm going to leave the highlights in the middle. I think having those highlights is really helping. So that's done for our edits there. Sometimes I would add in a little bit of a filter to the sky, but I don't really think it needs it. Maybe we could just give it a try for the sake of it. A linear filter this time. That's great for landscapes, great for skies, because you can just bring it in, does your whole sky. So maybe increase that contrast a bit. Something like that. Drag it down a bit. You can refine this as much as you want. You can feather it out by doing this. Something like that looks pretty nice. Again, we can up those whites. That's looking good. We can do a little bit more color work. Specifically, we can use the new color grading tools, which has been brought to not only Lightroom Classic on the desktop, but Lightroom on mobile as well. And that allows us to add color separately to the shadows, to the midtones and the highlights to get that really cinematic color tone. So I'm going to start off in the shadows. I want to add a little bit of blue to our shadows by literally just dragging the saturation slider into the hue that we want on the color wheel. You can see what happens to our shot as we move it around. I want to get a little bit of blue, not much, somewhere around there, just saturation 20-ish, about there. And in our highlights, I want to add a little bit of warmth, a little bit of orange tone, a little bit less. Again, saturation 20. And once you've set your saturation, you can then change the hue by just sort of dragging on the outside. It's very, very quick. Look how quick it is to do everything in this. It is not this quick in Classic on the desktop. It's so much faster. And then we can change our luminance. We can up that a little bit. I'm not going to add anything to the midtones. I'm going to increase the luminance slightly of our shadows because it gives it that kind of faded filmic look. But that, let's just say that is everything that I want to do on this image. There's our before. There's our after. I think that's looking really nice. But I've taken a lot of photos in this same scene, and so I don't want to be doing manual edits on every single one. So instead, I can just press Command-C, and we can copy all of the settings, including the tools, those separate individual local adjustments we've made. So let's tap that, copy all of those settings by pressing that. We can go to our next photo. We can go Command-V, paste those settings, and it's just pasted it in. Everything has been done, and it was almost instantaneous. You'll have seen just how quick that was. And we can do that again. Look at that, so quick. And back we go. Or alternatively, if you've got a lot of photos you want to do in a series, we can just select them all. Let's go select all of these. Yeah, let's do all of these. And then we can just go paste. In fact, actually, let's not, because of course we've got our tools, and some of these, the photo was taken in a different orientation, so our tools aren't going to work. So let's just go back onto this one, and what we're going to do is go copy settings, but this time deselect tools. Go OK. Let's go back. Let's go and select all of these as we did before, and then we can go paste settings. So there we are. We can just deselect that. and we can go in and have a look. And so now this photo has got the exact same settings applied. Looks really nice. There's our before, there's our after. Everything's been applied, the color grading's been applied, but we didn't apply the tools, so we can go back in with another brush tool. Let's use a slightly smaller size this time, and we can just paint in around here on the water, just like that. And we can do the same thing, up those whites, effect, up that clarity. Ooh, not quite so much this time, a little bit less. Something like that looks really cool. And then we've basically got another gorgeous photo, and we haven't had to start from scratch. It's been very, very quick. That is so crucial. If you're working on location, you haven't got a lot of time, you can just quickly copy those settings across and you've already got yourself a great shot. I haven't had to do anything to this one. It's just been copied from that previous image. Hasn't worked quite as well here because it's quite a bright image. So I need to bring up those shadows a lot more. And I'm actually not sure the color toning works here, but I do like the shot. But this is basically what I will do now at this point. I will start trying to find some of like the best images from the series, go through, I'll edit those. Maybe this one I don't like as much as the other ones. I'll give that a 0, take it out. And eventually you whittle it down to just the ones that you like most. It's a very, very simple process. Once you're done, of course, let's say, not so much that one. This one, though. This is one I really liked. Look at that. That was great. Or maybe this one. No, it was this one. Oh, I can't decide. I just love this little scene. I love these rocks. I love this water. It's so, so cool. We have, of course, got some problem in our top corner from the vignette from our lens. We can go to optics, enable our corrections. That's done a lot to get rid of that. Remove chromatic aberration. And a little bit of a crop is just going to help take that in. A little bit like that, a little bit from the top, and we press done. That's pretty much all I want to do. What about if we just brought that in though? A little bit dark on the sky, bit of contrast boost, a little bit of clarity to help those clouds pop out. Lovely stuff. So let's say I want to export this one, and this is going on, let's say, Instagram, because why wouldn't it? We can go up here and we can go to export to camera roll. But of course, if we click our little settings, then we can decide on exactly the settings that we want. I want it as a JPEG, dimensions, largest available. That's just going to export it in its original size. So that's going to be a big file size. We don't need that. So dimension, we can lock it down to small. That's 2000 pixels on the long edge. That is more than enough for Instagram. It also is going to mean that you can export it quicker. It's going to take up less space on your iPad itself. And it's going to be quicker when you send your file to your phone or to wherever it is it's going, particularly if you're on a slower internet connection. That's really handy. Image quality can be 80%. That's really, really good. You still won't notice much difference, but let's just pop it to 90%. You could go 100, but 90 is really, really good. So that's fine. We go okay, and that should do it. No, it doesn't. I have to actually press export to camera roll. So there we go. I've changed the settings and it's rendered it out. So now that photo will be in my camera roll on my iPad. I can then share that to Instagram. I can send it to my phone, send it to my friends. It's all done, and I can apply those settings very, very quickly. I do hope that this video has been helpful to see how I would work like this with my professional work on my iPad. The iPad is not just a tool for people who are very casual photographers. It's not just a tool for beginners. Lightroom itself on here is not just a tool for beginners. You do not need Lightroom Classic on the desktop. It is incredibly powerful, and it's really, really great if you want to work quickly. So for professional work, particularly when I'm doing photojournalism and I need to get my photos online quickly, Lightroom mobile like this on the iPad on my phone is incredibly powerful. If you haven't used it, I definitely recommend giving it a go. Of course, with the iPad, you have the benefit of it being touchscreen. So for doing things like dodging and burning, painting in those effects like you saw me doing, it's really dead simple to do that on screen with either your finger or, of course, with Apple Pencil or any stylus on any tablet or on your phone. It's great. I really, really enjoy it. You should definitely give it a go if you haven't already. And that does bring me to an end of this video, though. I do hope that it has been helpful to see how I would do all this, how I would use this professionally. If it has been helpful, then do please hit that like button, subscribe to my channel if you don't already, and I will see you next time.